Hello, this is Bryan from FantasyLabs. I am here doing a lineup review for the DraftKings NBA $1 million guaranteed Hall of Famer. It was last night, $200,000 to first place. It is not my lineup, but it is one from Kevin Miller. And we received this tweet from him. He said, at FantasyLabs NBA, "You helped change my life tonight. Thank you." And you could see a screenshot of him winning $200,000, which is just awesome. So I did want to take a moment and to break down his lineup because it was amazing. 364.5 DraftKings points. Obviously had two guys that went off for 70 plus in Giannis Antetokounmpo and Elfrid Payton. So just an amazing lineup. To quickly touch on the specifics of the tournament, this was a $33 buy-in, 35,000 people, obviously 1 million guaranteed. This top prize, 200,000, was a multi-entry tourney, so you could put in 150 lineups. But if we do just look for Kevin's lineup, you could see right here he was a single bullet. So definitely awesome lineup here. So let's jump into it. I think the thing that stands out the most right away is that he got off a lot of what ended up being very chalky plays, and especially the Denver side with Jokic out. A lot of those guys ended up being highly owned, and he did not go them, and he mostly avoided the Spurs guys. He did take his one shot on David Lee, who ended up being the highest owned player of the night. But all of those guys received a pretty big bump in usage, and at their low price points, David Lee was only 3,700, getting a huge bump in usage with Kawhi Leonard and LaMarcus Aldridge out. You can see here at that price point, 47.5, almost half the field here owned him, and he did come through. 18 points, 10 rebounds, 35 DraftKings points. But it just goes to show you that even in a very top-heavy field, you can still eat the chalk. You could still have a guy that is owned in a lot of lineups, and if you just sort of differentiate yourself with some lower owned players, as he did here, you can still put up a unique lineup and get to the top of the leaderboard. So I did want to jump over here to our NBA ownership dashboard. This is something that is updated just within minutes after every slate, and you can just see the ownership at different levels. So here's the $33 NBA 1 million Hall of Famer, which that's the tournament we're looking at here. Again, David Lee is the chalkiest, and Norman Powell, who we actually had in his forward spot here, was the second highest owned. So again, like, you can have some chalky players. You can have some guys that are highly owned. You just have to differentiate yourself. The big thing was that he sort of faded the rest of these guys. You know, he had Pau Gasol was at 5'4". He was the other guy that was going to be really chalky here, with the Spurs guys being out, almost 30% owned, and only put up 15 fantasy points. So that was a big thing, was avoiding that play, just because it dudded. So a lot of players weren't able to get up to the top of the leaderboards because they rostered Powell, and he decided to go only David Lee, which worked out. Interestingly enough, if you just sort of look through his lineup, Kemba Walker, Sean Kilpatrick, Giannis Antetokounmpo, who has point guard and small forward eligibility on DraftKings, Elfrid Payton, Norman Powell, and Ricky Rubio. So he took almost all guards. He had two bigs, David Lee and Rudy Gobert. If we flip over to where models were at yesterday, we can see that a lot of these were, pretty popular plays. Like, if we pull up Kemba Walker, he had been incredibly consistent. You see, like, he obviously had a good game last night, but he also had been crushing prior to. Ricky Rubio, sort of in the same boat, just been crushing value, and he was at home, where he has really positive home-away splits. Giannis Antetokounmpo was against the Knicks, not a great defense, and had been struggling a bit, so he was an intriguing bounce-back spot at some lower ownership, and he did have a lower salary on DraftKings compared to FanDuel. So I think that Kevin here, taking essentially 3 point guard, really 4 point guards if you include Giannis Antetokounmpo, gave him a unique lineup, and he got Kemba at 7%, because I think a lot of people went some chalkier plays with Steph Curry and James Harden. Jeremy Lin at that low price point was was fairly highly owned. So going some of these guys that had just really, really high ceilings. Elfrid Payton was certainly the chalk on FanDuel, but because of his a little bit elevated price point at 6'1", his ownership did dip down to only about 10% on DraftKings, and he put up that massive triple-double here. So I think getting unique in his lineup construction as opposed to just players is something that Kevin did really well here with going essentially 4 point guards. These are, point guards have the ball in their hands. They're the most in control. A lot of them have high usage. And he went with guys that had really high usage. Kemba is the highest usage player for Charlotte. Giannis certainly is the guy for Milwaukee. Elfrid Payton, big usage bump, big rebound rate bump as well. And you can see that he did have 14 rebounds with Nick Vucevic out. So really just great plays all around. And he rounded it out with some chalk, but some chalk that had high ceilings with Rudy Gobert, who was very cheap at 7.6, and Derek Favors was out. So he was really a really nice pivot. He wasn't super low owned, but a nice pivot from direct high ownership, like Pau Gasol at center at 30% versus Rudy Gobert with a much higher ceiling at about 10% less ownership was just a great pivot here from Kevin. Then he rounded it out with Sean Kilpatrick, who was only at 2%, but had been playing really well. If we just pull up his game logs, he had put up over 30 DraftKings points in each of his last 2 games, and had increased his usage rate quite a bit. He had 14 shot attempts here. He got to the foul line. So a guy that was being aggressive for a Brooklyn team that doesn't really have that many players that are high usage. And getting him at only 2% against an Atlanta team that has a good defense but really struggles against guards, particularly with Schroeder and Hardaway, was great. So I did want to spend a minute just breaking down this lineup. And I think, the biggest takeaway here was that, you can eat some chalk here with Lee and Gobert and even Powell, but just being unique in your lineup construction process, going 4 point guards essentially, can get you some really, really high ceiling players, but get you a unique lineup. So, Kevin, congrats. Awesome lineup. 364.5 DraftKings points, $200,000 richer this morning. Kevin, congrats. See you guys next time.